Hi, and welcome back to the North Lodge Cottage Garden, where I've waded my way all the way to the back of the wildflower meadow to bring you this vintage classic from David Austin Roses. Bred and introduced in 1961, this is Constance Spry, a large English climbing rose bred by David Austin Roses and named after the notorious and very famous florist who was well ahead of her time, mixing lots of different structure, texture and different plants in floral arrangements as early on as the 1930s and 1940s, often thought about as the creator of the modern floral arrangement. This particular rose is a really large English climber, reaching in excess of 20 feet, so it really is quite large. And in today's modern garden, you need to have a serious amount of space to be able to plant this rose and enjoy her to her full potential. This is what we call a single flowering rose, which means it flowers just once. A large flush of blooms very early on in the beginning of the season, and here in very early June, this 2-year-old specimen that I brought up at the David Austin show garden is just coming into flower now. So let's pick off a bloom and let's talk you through it. It is absolutely stunning, a very lovely true pink rose. You can see here in its early stage, very candy pink in its colour. I'm going to be particularly bad and I'm going to pick you another bloom, just this one here, to give you a little bit of an idea of how it ages out. You can see here the young juvenile flower opened today and the flower that's literally just starting to blow out now. Very soft pink, very delicate. In the center, a very lovely yellow eye packed full of stamens. This rose is loved by bees and pollinators, hoverflies, all of those lovely creatures you want to be bringing into the garden. As I say, a large, healthy, vigorous climber from David Austin Roses. This particular plant is not only big and fast growing, producing multiple canes and getting very large very quickly, but also is incredibly thorny. So if you have a space that you want to keep somebody out of, maybe you want to protect a boundary at the back of your property, grow it over a shed or an old apple tree to keep people out of your garden, Constance Spry might be a perfect adaptation for that. The beauty of this particular rose is because it's one of the old roses in the David Austin collections, the scent is absolutely stunning, which is really good. So if you want a climber to put up the front of your house and completely clad the front of your house in a beautiful heavily scented display, Constance Spry is going to do that for you. Even wet is a lovely fresh heady old English rose scent, which is really very pleasant. But really look at the difference in those flowers. So although you're talking about a single floral display lasting probably from the end of May all the way through to the end of June, a 5-week period where this particular rose is going to be smothered, literally dripping in flowers, you are going to have a lovely multitude of colours to look at. This wonderful candy pink to begin with, fading out with those stamens, very gold and rich in the center, and then as the flower fades and blooms out, several days old, into this lovely soft apple blossom pink white. Again, still lovely stamens in the center, but they're mellowing to a lovely sort of buttery yellow color, but the two together really very pleasant. This particular rose, as I say, is large, reaching up to 20 feet, so you do need to give it plenty of space. And if you're planting it against a wall, you need to give it a little bit of space between the wall and the actual plant itself, something in the region of about 18 inches to 24 inches, to make sure it has plenty of room for its roots and it has the ability to get hold of as much water as possible. If you're training this up a building, you must pay close attention to your supports and your training wires. This rose is going to get big and it's going to get heavy, and because it's really thorny, it's not the kind of thing that you want coming off the wall halfway through the season when it's loaded with blooms. You simply won't be able to get it back upright again. So before your rose grows, you really need to make sure that you're planning ahead with those wires and those straining wires and those wall anchors to make sure you have plenty of capacity to make sure it's held safely in place. pair this one with a clematis that may be later flowering to elongate your display, and Constance Spry from David Austin Roses will really reward you with a wonderful show. And as I say, unrivaled with its scent, really very, very good. The scent, if you're growing other climbing roses from David Austin, is very, very similar to that of the Generous Gardener, as is the colour, but you're going to get one really, really large, powerful show, a real talking piece in the garden if you have the space. So this is Constance Spry, introduced by David Austin Roses in very, very early 1961. I stagger with that one because I want to keep saying a different year, but 1961, one of the first of the David Austin Roses, a real retro classic. And if you have the space, I've given it 4 or 5 8-foot fence panels here up in the wildflower meadow. It has plenty of space, and I'm looking forward to, as this rose really finds its stride, this really giving me a wonderful show before the wildflower meadow really comes up and does its thing, dripping with absolute flowers. And I'm going to pair this with a very, very dark purple clematis, which is going to flower in July and August and September to give me an extra bit of show. But this is Constance Spry from David Austin Roses, a really large English climber reaching in excess of 20 feet.